My name is Jammi, and welcome to the Gauntlet podcast. I'm joined today by the effervescent Sherri, my co-host. How are you doing today, Sherri?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing super great. Thanks for asking. For this month, we have with us Shane Marble. Dun, 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 dun. Hi, Shane.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Shane, for our listeners, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
My name's Shane. I'm pretty new to the Gauntlet. I think I played my first game maybe last September, and since then have dived in as deeply as I could, played a bunch of games. I did the Gauntlet Facilitator Camp last November with Alan R. That was really great. And now I'm running some games and really excited to be here.
Yeah, oh my gosh, everyone on the Gauntlet loves your games. A lot of people fought tooth and nail to get into the Monster Hearts D&D game. My partner's so happy he got in. Actually, spoiler, he got in because I saw you posted and I was like, Matthew, you have to sign for this game right now before it disappears. But there you go. But yeah, so we're so glad to have you on the show, Shane.
Thank you.
So, for our first segment, each of us goes over the RPGs we played in December and January, and we talk in depth about one we got to play on the Gauntlet calendar. So, Sherri, how was your December and January gaming?
It was actually pretty spectacular, but a little lighter than I would have liked, but still spectacular. Everything was just hit all the beats. So off Gauntlet, I got to play more of Star Trek Express, which is just a simplified version of the Star Trek game that we are really loving. We also played 13th Age with the home group, and we are playing 7th Sea Express and Hearts of Wulin with the Supernatural playbooks, which were a lot of fun. As well, played a Dragon Age PBTA playtest, which is shaping up very nicely, super Dragon Age flavory. So that is amazing. And then there's this little unnamed Forged in the Dark Intrigue game playtest where we made characters for it. I've been thinking about those characters since then, but I don't know when we're actually going to get a chance to play. It's just this little mysterious thing off on the side. On Gauntlet, though, I have gotten to play Brinkwood Legacy, which is a campaign of Brinkwood and 2 other games that are part of the stretch goals for Brinkwood for that Kickstarter. And then I've also played Space Worm vs. Unicorn as well. I also played Hunter's Code, and that was off Gauntlet. So Hunter's Code was off Gauntlet, but is a fabulous Forged in the Dark game. So this year for me so far has been all Forged in the Dark, and I'm pretty happy about that. So what I want to talk about is Brinkwood Legacy. So what Brinkwood Legacy is it's a play cycle of the following games. There's Brinkwood, The Blood of Tyrants, which is a Forged in the Dark game that's about a sort of rebellion against vampires. It was kickstarted recently by the San Gennaro Co-op, and it is a really well and interestingly designed Forged in the Dark game. 2 of the stretch goals are part of this sort of cycle. One is Refuge. It's sort of a cozy belonging outside belonging game of the place where the rebels rest their heads. It's a stretch goal. It's on the Kickstarter. That was by Jammi and Sherri. I don't know this person at all.
Hello.
Hello, yes. And then also, In the Time of Our Despair, which is a trophy dart game where we experience and try to withstand the horrors that the vampires enacted on the world back in the day. And that was also a stretch goal on that Kickstarter by Jammi and Sherri. So there are these 2 games. If you go and do the Brinkwood Kickstarter, you will get those 2 games as part of the package. We are playing those. We started out by playing Refuge and Playtest to make sure that it played well. And then we decided, let's do this campaign. So we kicked it off with In the Time of Our Despair. From then, we have switched between Brinkwood and Refuge with the promise of going back to In the Time of Our Despair when we want to create some more historical horrors. But what's worked for me so far is that Brinkwood is, unlike Blades in the Dark, explicitly heroic. So that's a huge plus for me. I really like living in that world where what we're doing is basically positive. Particularly now, after a particularly unfun year, that has felt very, very good. But the other thing about Brinkwood is that it does a lot of smart things to generate fun. The characters never need to fear that they can't contribute to a foray because they can always adopt roles that come with these masks of the Fae that are part of the game. So even if you're just a humble healer, you can get out there and wreak havoc with that Mask of Riot, or with Rune, or with Violence, or even Judgment. But the other thing that I really like about Brinkwood is it makes progress very granular, even more so than the original Blades in the Dark. Essentially, you establish yourself with the locals and the groups by helping them out, and you end up with these resources, with information, and with more things that need to be done. But you build up your masks as well, you build up your characters, and you're just sort of, every time you play, there's something new that comes to the organization. And it might not change anything hugely, but it accrues quickly, and you start to have more opportunities and more interest. There's always tons of interesting things to do. Brinkwood is definitely builds this sort of invitation to play game tech into everything. You make oaths to the masks when you put them on, and those get you involved into something that you have to do beyond just the foray. And then all throughout the foray, they're going to be offering you additional bargains as you use them. So there are all these complications that push you to play harder, risk more, try things outside your comfort zone. And also kiss more cuties, because the masks in our campaign have an agenda for sure.
Yes, I don't know where that came from. Yes.
Yeah, not sure, but I'm all for it. So it has been super fun. The other thing is, because Fortune in the Dark games need time to play out, you are going to be doing a lot of forays, but that means you're doing a bunch of stuff and you don't always have time to process it. So using Refuge really gives that downtime of the portion of Brinkwood time to breathe. You have more time to suss out the sort of, after you come back from the foray, why things have happened and what's going to follow. If you've rescued a bunch of folks on a foray, well, with Refuge you get the chance to find out more about them and how they're going to manage to get on with their lives after that, where they go from there. If that's what you want to do, you can also just trade kisses or build new features to the Refuge, or rope, the stay-at-homes into working on your long-term projects. But the Refuge folks are generating long-term projects of their own. So it's one of those things where it gives you lots of opportunities, also adding more invitation to play in more ways. So Refuge is pretty amazing. And I love it in that. It's just like a breathing time that you have in the midst of the game. And then the other game, In the Time of Our Despair, which we used as sort of the kickoff of the campaign, is a trophy dart game. And so it let us establish for our world our own particular grisly details of that history of the fall of the vampires. So we met 4 powerful fae who were overcome by the corruption. And then later in the forays, when we discover hints and even survivors from those harrowing events in the Brinkwood, we really want to know what's happened to them between then and now. And the other thing about In the Time of Our Despair is those collaborations that you have where you're playing Trophy Dark, that you build things up, that fights lore fatigue and invites investment in the story of the characters. Because it's a big setting, and you don't want to have to memorize everything in order to navigate. So having that time in the Time of Our Despair to establish who were important characters and the things that happen, you own those. To me, Brinkwood's pretty dynamite. The other 2 games are designed for the world of Brinkwood, so these aren't just hacks, they're really well thought out additions to the world, with the idea that different game systems highlight different kinds of play and different kinds of information. Now, usually talk about what I'm less sure about. I love Refuge, I really do. But it's belonging outside belonging, so it's doing something very different than the other 2. It's about every player having the ability to pick up and use different setting elements and personalities associated with the Refuge. That can take some practice for players used to strict GM player models of RPGs, like me. It took me a while to get used to it. I love it now, but at first I was like, oh, am I allowed to do this? What if I make someone sad? I can deal with it now. It's definitely worth the effort. I look forward to every session of Refuge, and I am so glad I can play it now. My instincts, waiting for the GM to give me the cue, it took me a long time to let go of that and feel that I had permission to make changes and make choices and set up how a thing looked. The other thing I would say is that missing a foray session is one thing, but missing a session of In the Time of Our Despair is going to make some of the subsequent play a lot less rich for a player who missed out. So those are sessions you want to make sure the game is all there for, because that is kind of that big lore and those significant characters that are come down and you go, ooh, if we found them, that means, oh, okay. So yeah, that's all exciting stuff, that it's like no one would be going, ooh, it's getting good now if they weren't there. So, and I think that one of the things is Fortune in the Dark games are super satisfying as campaigns, and Refuge and In the Time of Our Despair add more sessions, but to great effect. We're on session 8, and it feels like we're just getting our feet under us. But we've done a ton of cool things, but there's so much more to do. It's probably not a way to go for the one-shot crowd or even the monthly GM rotation groups. But if you can feasibly get a run of 20 or more sessions, this is super, super good. So this is for those of you who have that luxury, and I hope that a lot of you do, because this is a great way to do it. My takeaway is, I love the changes in pace that these 3 games together bring. I love the deeper dives that you get from Refuge and from In the Time of Our Despair. And I am 100% here for the collaborative lore and setting.
Yeah, and I feel like as someone who is the lucky GM of Brinkwood and some of the other games, I felt like as a GM it was super fun to, because when we played, actually it's originally called In the Face of Our Despair, but as you've been saying, In the Time of Our Despair, I feel like that's a better title, isn't it? Like, it sort of connotes how you're flashbacking in time. No. I was thinking about it while you were saying, like, no, I think we're going to keep it so that this podcast shows this was when Jammi decided to change the name because In the Time of Our Despair is much better.
So. By the way, I'm the worst friend in the whole world. You can't even get the name of your game.
It's totally fine. But I remember when we played the game, it was so much fun taking those characters and then turning your PCs into NPCs in our Brinkwood game. And then the same thing with Refuge, taking those PCs from Refuge and turning them into NPCs.
It just adds a ton of richness. It's fun. It's like you feel like you know something, and when things happen, you're like, ooh, what does that mean? What's going on where I'm not right now? It's really good fun.
I feel so sold. As soon as I get off this podcast recording, I'm going to try and track myself down a copy.
I highly recommend Brinkwood at the very least. I don't want to sound like I highly recommend my game.
But I highly recommend those games. So.
But I'm super addicted to the idea now of using different games to tell the same story. And to a certain extent, Rich is doing that. Rich is running several games within the Star Wars universe, and he's interweaving all of the stories together. But I think it's also fun as a group that keeps coming together every so often to keep playing in the same world, but they're playing through different games. It's been really, really fun so far. I'm surprised it's working out this well. I thought it'll work out okay. It'll be kind of fun. It's like, oh, it's really good.
No, it just gets better as you go along. Because you're picking up the significance. You're watching people grow up and build things, and you want everything to go well, and it's all full of disastrous dice. So it's fraught.
Yeah. And now I'm thinking about the other possibilities, right? What if you, in the same campaign, play Monster Hearts as the teenagers, and then you also play Urban Shadows as, like, the adults who are trying to figure out what's going on in the high school.
Ooh.
I mean, I really love the idea of using different game systems to like flesh out more stories in the same world. I was running a couple of games last year, like Monster Hearts and Monster of the Week, where both campaigns had a character who was a teenage werewolf, and I really wanted to like spin it off into a bite marks like one shot or something where those two characters would get to cross over. I really like that sort of idea.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that sounds like a perfect combination, all the werewolves. So, Shane, how was your December and January in gaming?
Relatively light, I guess, as well, but still got in some pretty great games. Off the Gauntlet, I got to play in a couple of sessions of Puckett's Passiona's game. That was super fun. Ran some Monster Hearts and Damn the Man Saved the Music, which I really enjoyed. And I haven't yet, but by the end of January, we'll get back to my Monster of the Week game, which is the one that's closest to my heart. It's like my home game that's been going on with different variations on the same group for so long. So I'm really excited to get back to it. On the Gauntlet, I ran the Paperflesh Advent for Trophy Dark, a couple of sessions of Cthulhu Deep Green, Monster Hearts, like you mentioned, and I got to play in your Droid Cantina game and Mike Ferdinando's Naked City Blues, which is what I want to talk some more about. Naked City Blues is a game by a member of the Gauntlet, Mike Ferdinando. It's a Brindlewood Bay hack that is about sort of film noir or hard-boiled style detectives. It's in sort of playtest at the moment. We got to play in the first session recently. We've had a few now. What worked for me? I really love hard-boiled fiction and film noir. I feel like a lot of games that even though I enjoy the games, I'm not that familiar with the genres or the fiction or the conventions that underpin it. I've never read Tolkien. I don't care for Lovecraft. I don't really read much science fiction. But if we have a noir game, like I'm really at home with this kind of style and the touchstones that the genre has. I think Mike has done a great job with super evocative names for some of the moves and mechanics. The way the gumshoe moves use different film noir names. That really threw me a little bit because it was really hard to decide whether to give my character the most useful move for my character or the one named after the movie that I like the most.
Oh, that's so cool, though.
Yeah, so I couldn't help but go with Sunset Boulevard, which probably wasn't the most...
Oh, that's such a good movie, though.
Probably not the most relevant for my character, but definitely my favorite movie.
Oh my gosh. I have to see what that movie is, because I'm seeing her going down the stairs, right? Like,
so I think
like such an iconic moment.
The movie is like that you have a patron who's a wealthy or famous, like, older person who can help you with the mysteries.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. all the moves are really great. Like, if you love film noir, you would really love the set of gumshoe moves. It has a really great approach to having a historical setting because the game is set in the 40s. And I think it's often hard for me, like I think a lot about historical settings that I'd like to run games in. I kind of worry about how you would get everyone on the same page or something like that. In Naked City Blues, all the players give their character a set of trophies or kind of items that they've picked up across their adventures. And it was really interesting to see the way that each of the players kind of had their own ideas about the 1940s, and piling those up together created like this very evocative setting. You know, one player had the like flash 1940s car, which I would never have thought of. One character has some Edith Head memorabilia, which is a whole other like take on the 40s. One had like a connection to the industrial workers of the world. And it was really interesting to see this kind of 40s that wasn't any one person's idea of the era, but was a kind of produced through play in this really interesting way. I thought that was great. All the characters in the game are so fun. I love my character, a former Hollywood studio fixer who was driven out by the communist blacklists and has turned to private detecting to make money. All the characters are great. And there's a really fun mechanic, or two mechanics really, about B-plot and vices, which are the things that your character is kind of caught up with when they're not detecting. The point where I went from excited about the game to loving the game was when I saw on the pick list for the B-plot the one that I've chosen, which is that my landlord is constantly annoying me or harassing me because my rent's late, which I think is such a great, iconic old movie moment that I would never have thought of, but love to see and love to play out. What I'm less sure about, definitely harder to make this list because I feel so like in the tank for this game. I just want to say good things about it. We haven't really gotten to see, because it's a shorter playtest game, the kind of larger conspiracy elements, similar to the Void mystery in Brindlewood Bay. Mike's done such a great job of setting up the B plots that I really want them to have more time and focus in the game. And I think that's something that will definitely get worked out through iterations of playtesting. All the player-facing mechanics in this game are working great, like really ready to go. Mike was definitely saying in the last session that he needed to refine some of the stuff on his end a little more, but it's just been really great fun, and I'm so excited definitely to run this game in future and also to play it more. Takeaway, absolutely recommend this game if you get a chance to play it, if you're a fan of the genre or just fan of games in general. I'm really excited to see how Mike continues to develop it.
Awesome. I'm just so glad to hear people are hacking Brindlewood Bay to good effect. This sounds perfect. When you were describing
it really
the
fits
B-plots,
super well.
Like, yeah, that's awesome.
And it's so funny because that's the same, like how you felt there could have been more B-plots, or you would have liked to have more of it, is the same thing people said about the cozy moments in Brindlewood Bay. So it's so interesting. Well, for my months of gaming in December and January, the games that I got to play, I've also been doing a lot of Forge in the Dark, like Sherri. So off the Gauntlet, I got to play Court of Blades. That's still going on. We're wrapping up this particular series on actual play with Sean Nittner and the creators of Court of Blades. So that's been fun. We got to play our Dragon Age PBTA hack, which I put together in a feverish dream because I'm so impatient for Dragon Age 4. So I made a PBTA hack like you do. I also got to run Bluebeard's Bride, which is the first time in a long time. I used to run Bluebeard's Bride a lot, so it was super fun to run it again for a few Gauntlet folks off the Gauntlet. And I got to play Hunter's Code, which Sam Zimmerman is working on. That's been a lot of fun. Also Forged in the Dark. And then on the Gauntlet, I still remember what a high the Star Wars Saturday event was in December. That was super fun. I got to play Dragontina with Shane. Shane had the most star-studded career as a droid. Just so, so cute. Also got to play One Last Job, and then got to play Camp Flying Moves for Girls of All Kinds. And Brinkwood Legacy, got to play them at Sherri, and a few others. That's super fun. And I also got to be part of the brand new first time ever Gauntlet Book Club, where we got to play Bite Mark. So I'm going to talk about the Gauntlet Book Club for this episode. The Gauntlet Book Club is an experiment. Our own David Morrison has put it together where everyone is assigned a book to read, and then that book club leads into a game series on the Gauntlet. So it's a super, super fun idea. Participants read the book ahead of time. In the first session, we meet up to talk about the book. And the most fun part of that discussion is we figure out what themes and ideas from the book we want to explore in the game we're going to play. In the next session, we make characters and we begin playing. So in future book club events, David is thinking about recommending the book first and then letting the readers decide what TTRPG or hack that they can play to best capture interesting themes from the book. But for this first series, David already picked out both the book and the game ahead of time because it was just such a... And I can see why he did it because it's just perfect alignment. So the book is Wolfsong by TJ Klune. It's part of the Green Creek series. It's a really emotional coming-of-age story. I cried several times. Well, actually, my partner was so upset because I would be on the couch or in the bed. Because I read, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I read the entire book in less than 24 hours. So I was like on the couch or on the bed and I'd be making these weird sounds like, oh no, like, and then I'd just be like sobbing by myself. And Matthew's like, are you okay? And I'm like, it's okay. So anyway, it's a really emotional coming of age story. Our main character, Ox, he's 12 in the beginning of the book, but by the end of it, he's almost 30 years old. So I feel so invested in Ox. And Ox gets caught up in a mysterious family of werewolves, and where queer romance and family drama are at the center of it all. It's a romance novel, first and foremost. And I do have to say, like, if the book sounds interesting to you, I should put out some content warnings if you're interested in picking it up. So there's violence, death, and there are references to abuse. We don't get into detail, but it is there. It also features a plot involving attraction between a minor and an adult, but it's not acted upon while the character is a minor. So just putting it out there. So that was the book. And then the game is Bite Marks by Becky Annison. And it's a game of werewolf pack dynamics, which looks at challenges both internal and external that the werewolf pack faces. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And so what worked for me is I love the book, as I couldn't resist talking about just now. I've had such a hard time reading for so many years. I used to be really super into books, but I don't know if it's like social media or age that have ruined my attention span, but I can't sit down to read a book lately. But this one, I couldn't put down. I wanted to know what is going to happen to Ox, what is going to happen to the other characters. The book is so poetic, right? The language is so poetic and beautiful, and the author would like use the same phrases every so often across chapters, and there would be just like instant crying for me every time one of those phrases came up. It was so good. So what was really fun is because we all read the same book, it was so easy to create characters and the pack from the same reference. So usually in RPGs, like a lot of us bring in different inspirations and different things, and sometimes like even if we both bring in Star Wars, maybe we're thinking about different Star Wars. Maybe it's been 1 month when someone watched Star Wars last. For another person, it's been years. So there's never, you don't completely align all the time, And it's not something that I think is bad. I just notice now because we had all just read the book. It was so much easier to just jump in from that same foundation. And I really felt the difference because I've played Bite Marks before. I got to play Under Ferret, and that was really cool. But it took me a while to get the hang of who my character was then, and coming up with the pack culture and pack traditions, which you do during character generation. I remember it being much more difficult before, because it really felt like I was plucking it out of nowhere. But here, because we had Red Wolf Song, and the pack traditions are so strong in that book, the family traditions are so strong in that book, even if we didn't get all of them, it was easier to, like, be inspired. The game quickly creates family drama and throws you into immediately compelling pack dynamics. So you build the drama and genuine tragedy through evocative questions during character creation. Super good. Like, each playbook has a really good set of questions. And because we came up with pack culture and traditions, it's easy to begin interacting with each other as family immediately. Like, with all that it entails, like, I felt immediately close to the other characters. I felt immediately awkward with some of the characters. Like, oh, I allowed your sibling to die tragically so that my sibling, the alpha, could live. Right? So it immediately... And we're here at the dinner table. And I cooked dinner, but you're not eating it. Like, it really feels like a werewolf family. It just came together so well. It just feels so real and so layered. I'm really looking forward to future sessions. And I think Bite Marks, like most PBTA games, really thrive when you give it enough sessions to breathe. So I'm glad we have quite a few sessions. We have about 6 sessions left, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, and so another thing I love is that it's fun to be a werewolf. It's just really good. So the moves are super evocative. They're super fun. The pack pull is great. Super innovative. I like how you can use the pack pull for different moves. So you build up the pack, sort of like how you build up team and mask, something similar. Depending on how many tokens you take from the pool, it will create like different moves, right? So for example, you can assist or you can defend territory. There are a few other moves, super, super cool. But in general, I just like being a werewolf. I like being part of a family I care about. I like the supernatural magic of changing into a werewolf. It's been a lot of fun. And my favorite little mechanic, this is the last thing I want to bring up, is heartbeats. So once you pick a playbook, you have a list to choose from, right? And you choose 3 heartbeats for your character. And the ones I chose were loving, secretive, and sacrificing. And every time you play into those heartbeats, you get XP from it too. And so it's such an interesting and easy way to guide play. I really, really enjoyed it. Because it's so simple. It's just like a few words, but it's enough to build your character around, which is really cool. What I'm less sure about, and like Shane, I just love the game so much, so it's hard to find things I'm not sure about. But I will say joining a book club does take a reading commitment. I was lucky. I got to read it like about a month ahead of time and went through quickly, but you might not like the book. We had a few folks in the group who didn't like the book as much as I did. These things are very subjective, so that is the truth of things. And then another thing is Bite Marks is very hyper-focused, which is using the PBTA system and framework. Well, I think it's a strength that it's so focused on werewolf family pack dynamics, right? I really like that. But if you're not a fan of the family dynamics and the drama of pack domination and disobeying, you know, because there is some tension that's built into the game, like that's part of it. And so if you don't like that, then the game probably isn't for you. And I think the last point to bring up definitely is Bite Marks does not hold back. There are some things to consider. There is mention of cannibalism. It's actually built into 2 moves for one of the playbooks, the Howl, which I'm playing. So it was easy enough to change it into something else because, you know, no one in the group was comfortable with that. So I changed it to Eating Dreams instead. But I feel like I should mention it. And there are also sex moves, which really support the game and the different themes per playbook, but I understand that this makes some people uncomfortable. And I will say that even though Bite Marks doesn't hold back, it does set clear boundaries and there's safety that's built into the system, rather than just saying, like, use safety tools on the side. I do appreciate how in different parts of the game they build in that safety. And so my takeaway is I really want to see more book club. I'm so glad David put this idea together. I'm super excited for future sessions he puts up, but I'd also like to see other people trying to do the same thing. What if instead you watch a movie or a TV series or an anime? I'm such an anime person, so the first thing I thought of was, what if you watch Revolutionary Girl Utena together before playing Academy of the Blade, which is deeply inspired by Utena, right? It would be super awesome. Or what if you read the comics Young Avengers before playing Masks, because Young Avengers like directly inspired a lot of the Mask game. Like, I read Young Avengers after I started playing Masks, and I saw how there were like actual moves that were named after things the characters said. Right, so I was like, "Oh, this is so cool!" Right, the Sunset Boulevard of this moment. And another idea I had, because like I reread The House of Asterion, which is a super short story, like it's only a page or so, but it also speaks to like the Greek tragedy of things. So what if you read that before playing Agon? So the possibilities are endless. I just love this idea so much.
Hi, this is Lowell, manager for the Gauntlet gaming community. I want to tell you that we have a Gauntlet Community Open Gaming event coming up the weekend of February 25th through the 28th. This is a free online RPG mini-con aimed at getting new players acclimated to online play, showing off awesome story, OSR, and indie games, and also introducing folks to how we run games on the Gauntlet. Signups will open February 1st at noon Eastern. Even if an event's filled, we have wait lists, and signing up for those is a good way to show game facilitators what RPGs are in demand. You can find all the details and links at gauntlet-rpg.com/gauntlet-community-open-gaming. There you'll find a link to the online registration calendar. Most sessions run 3 to 4 hours, and we have scheduled breaks between blocks. We're still adding events as of this recording. All sessions follow our Gauntlet Code of Conduct, which includes the mandatory presentation and use of safety tools by game facilitators. We hope you'll check out this community-created event. It's free, and anyone can play. You don't have to be a Patreon supporter or community member. Thanks so much.
Listeners, for our next segment, Shane is going to talk about running different games by trans creators this year. So we'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, thanks. So a goal that I set for myself this year is to run at least one game each month by a different trans or non-binary designer. Mostly on the Gauntlet, I expect, just because that's probably the main place that I'll be running different games for a while. I was a little hesitant to talk about this publicly. It was more of a internal goal, and I do worry that now that I'm talking about it, I actually have to carry it through, which is always a worry, but that's okay because
that's why
we're here to support you.
Yeah. We're here. We'll hold you accountable.
Exactly.
Okay, Sherri and I are coming from different, but we're here to support you, and Sherri's here to hold you accountable. So.
Some of us are soft, some of us are hard.
Yeah, it's great to have the carrot and the stick right here. So just to talk a little bit about why I wanted to do that, and then about some of the games that I'm excited to run. First of all, I just love making New Year's resolutions. I think it's really fun. I don't think that sticking to them is important at all, but I think it's just a nice thing to do and a good way to reflect on your goals. One of the reasons that I thought about this in particular is that, especially as someone new to the Gauntlet, for a long time I've really wanted to run more games, but I just haven't had players who wanted to play a lot of different games with me. So now that I have access to all these amazing players, I also have the problem of just so many options, so many games that I could run and would want to run, and wanted to think about a way to kind of cut that down and narrow it down to something that was manageable. And as I thought about the games that I already enjoy running or want to run in the future, a lot of them just are by trans or non-binary designers. And that's because trans and non-binary designers make a lot of great games. I think anyone in the indie space probably knows that really well. I don't think that's a controversial thing to say at all. And so when I think about what these games in particular have to offer, or why I would want to do this, first and foremost, these are really fun games. The goal of running a lot of games by trans and non-binary designers, obviously that has a political or kind of social aspect, but I already spend enough time on political and social projects that feel like work to me. I don't need any more of that in my game time. When I'm playing games, I want them to be fun, and I expect that these games will be really fun. That's the main reason to do it. And also, by looking actively for games by trans people, I'm going to find and get to actually run some games that will be really fun that I wouldn't have come across or wouldn't have gotten to the table if I didn't have that specific focus. And the other thing, of course, is that I'm a trans woman myself. This is my community. This is the community that I want to support and the games that I'm excited about supporting and showcasing. I'm also interested, to see some of the different ways trans designers have explored gender or trans identity in their games. I certainly don't expect that to be a focus in all of the games that I'm going to play, but some games it is clearly a key focus. I think in particular of Monster Hearts, which is very much about bodies and identities that are constantly changing or escaping our control in different ways. And Sleepaway, which has those great gender pick lists that vary from, there's no he, him, she, her, man, woman type genders available in the pick lists. They vary from terms that are more or less conventionally gendered, like you might be an old woman atop a mountain, or, I think a sports dyke is one of them. But you also get to choose from genders like lightning or an old indie song about friendship, which I think is really fun and interesting. So yeah, interested to see how all kinds of different cis and trans players will engage with those elements. I think that will be really fun as well. In terms of some of the games that I'm going to be playing, well, as we've mentioned before, I started out with Monster Hearts for a whole range of reasons. One is that it just is a brilliant game. Everyone loves Monster Hearts. Everyone wants to play it, in my experience. I guess there are people who don't want to play Monster Hearts, but I don't think they're the people that I want to play with necessarily. Avery Elder is a fantastic designer, has done amazing work and been so innovative in Monster Hearts and elsewhere. It's great, always great to run her games. It's a game I'm very comfortable running, and I knew I had a really good idea for a Monster Hearts game. Like, Jammi, you kind of were referring to this before. But coming to the Gauntlet, to a new community, wondering if people would really want to sign up for 4 sessions by a GM they didn't know, I knew that I could get people into this game, which is, like you said before, the premise is that emotionally volatile teenage monsters are forced to play D&D together in the 1980s. So crossover of the John Hughes Breakfast Club vibe with the Jack Chick comics about how D&D is leading you directly to real magic and Satanism. And that has been super fun. It's just great to run. In February, I'm running Invincible Sword Princess, which is Kazumi Chin's game of post-colonial revenge about some sisters who set out to avenge their mother's murder. I'm really excited about this one. I think this really falls in the category that I mentioned of games I probably wouldn't have gotten to the table without this explicit focus on games by trans and non-binary designers, but I'm so excited about it. It's a Powered by the Apocalypse game. You have 3 stats, which are Invincible, Sword, and Princess. It's designed to be played over 3 sessions, which is a great length for a game for someone with my attention span. I'm just really excited to play that one. And also in February at the Gauntlet Community Open Gaming Weekend, I'm going to run They Came to Play Ball, which is Adira Slattery's game about cosmic athletes who've been transformed by eldritch powers. It's a Firebrands hack that cites Space Jam as a key touchstone, so I've been really excited to run that. It looks so fun.
I actually also really want to try because I feel like it'll help me understand Blazeball.
Yeah, I see so many tweets about Blazeball and I have no idea what is going on. I don't think that's just because I'm not American, so I don't know what baseball is, but
there's some really good videos online, and I watch them and I still don't understand. But I think that's part of the joy.
Yeah,
right?
I'm not really clear that there's an understanding to come to, but it seems really fun. I'm not sure what I'm going to put on in March yet, but there will definitely be another game in March. Some of the things on my shortlist: Sleepaway, which I mentioned before, by J Dragon; Lucian Kahn's game Visigoths versus Morgoths. I've run that before as a one-shot, and it was just a great time, and I'm really excited to see how it plays out over something like 4 sessions. There's a game kickstarting until February 15th called Dungeon Bitches, with estimated delivery this September, that sounds really great to me and I definitely want to run. According to the Kickstarter, it is a game where disaster lesbians get fucked up in dungeons. Yeah, I'm really excited about this game in particular, but also just more generally about the growth of kind of intentionally and explicitly queer fantasy games. Obviously, Thirsty Sword Lesbians is another one. This Dungeon Bitches, love to see it. I know so many queer people who love D&D, and I would love to see them try some more indie games or some more intentionally queer games, and I'm really excited about that happening more. One of the stretch goals for Dungeon Bitches that has already funded is a Riot Girl horror setting and adventure set in the 90s in the American Midwest, and that is just chef's kiss to me. I am so ready for that. I'm so excited to run it. And also a little game you might have heard of called Apocalypse Keys. I would love to get to the table sometime. There's also a couple of games that I really like and definitely want to run but feel a bit mechanically daunted by. One of those is I Hunt by Olivia Hill and Philomena Young. And I don't think this is actually that mechanically complex, but I think just fate dice throw me. I feel overwhelmed, but I'll get there.
It was a
Same,
good game.
same.
It's a great game.
It's a good game, but I also need someone else to do the math.
The heavy lifting in the game is in different places than it is in PBTA, but
Yeah.
it's
True.
awesome.
Yeah.
It's very good, though.
It's
It's
very
very good.
And the other one is Chubo's Marvelous Wish Granting Engine, or maybe something else by Jenna Ketter and Moran. That looks really fun to me. The PDF is many hundreds of pages.
Inscrutable. And it's
It's
inscrutable.
a chunky PDF.
Yeah.
So I just want to be clear again, since I'm basically forcing myself to go through with these things by talking about them publicly. When I say I'm daunted by these games, I am definitely going to run these at some point this year on the Gauntlet. I'm just going to spend a few extra months stressing about it first, and then frantically try to figure out the rules, or enough rules to run them about 3 hours before the game starts.
Yes.
Perfect.
The other thing that I want to force myself to do by publicly announcing it is that I hope I myself will be one of the trans designers whose work I get to run this year. I'm working on my first game at the moment, or trying to. It's an investigative horror game about glamorous stars and terrible secrets in 1930s Hollywood, and I hope to have that ready for playtesting by about the middle of the year.
Yeah, so exciting.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Awesome.
So that's pretty much what I wanted to say. I guess just like by way of wrapping it up, if anyone listening wants to suggest a game of your own or another trans or non-binary designer that I haven't mentioned, I would love to hear about it. Please get in touch. And if any trans or non-binary or gender non-conforming players would like to play in any of these games, whether you're on the Gauntlet already or not, I would love to hear from you, and we'll absolutely work out a way to get you into one of my games.
Yeah, that's super awesome. I'm super glad about this. And like when you were saying earlier about how some of these games are explicit, but I also noticed like sometimes like we don't know what we put of ourselves into the game. And I think like one example was, I mean, I can only speak from my own experience, but someone asked me, how did your identity as someone who's non-binary show up in like Bayan Returning Home, which is like a cyberpunk supernatural game? And at first I thought, not really. But then I took a look and I'm like, oh, the fact that they can switch back and forth between different forms and how they look and how other people perceive them, I didn't realize it. It's been there all this time. So, but I think that's what makes it interesting, right? Like we don't realize what we put of ourselves. And so by focusing on these games from all these different people, all these different voices, but within the trans non-binary community, that's super exciting. I can't wait to see where that goes.
Thanks.
I think one of the things that I'm delighted by are there's all these games, and I know the games just from the games. I'm like, oh, that's a great game. That's a great game. Even there's no, it's a great game by some particular group. It's just a great game. Everyone you listed, I haven't played Dungeon Bits yet, so I don't know about that one. But all the other ones are amazing games that have gotten tons of plays on the Gauntlet and elsewhere. So, I mean, good stuff. Through and through.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, these are all like actually great, amazing games, and I'm just really excited to play them all.
Listeners, in our final segment, each of us talks about something which is creating joy for us right now. We like to call it What's Giving Us Life. So, Sherri, what's giving you life?
Okay, this is the dumbest thing in the whole world, but on the recommendation of Rich Rogers, started watching the new Saved by the Bell.
Oh, there's a new one? I somehow
Yes.
missed that.
Okay.
What?
It's crazy because it's like stupid, dumb teen comedy in the exact same way the show was, but it's trying so hard to get everything right, doing right by all the people in it. It is a marvel to watch. It is like spot on with its tone for the callback to Saved by the Bell without being slavish to it.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it's got like a super diverse cast that is really charming, and I mean, they're out and out about mean people are mean people, and there's a kind of thing about empathy and stuff that they slowly get a hold of. The adults are as big a messes as the kids are, but it feels really true to the original Saved by the Bell and all of its corniness, but it's just smarter. I've been watching it as, what should we say, you see media that's actually moved along a little ways, and it's kind of fascinating to watch to see what they're doing. So I watch it, and my eyes get wide, and I'm like, hey, they didn't mess it up horribly. I don't have to wince the whole way through. I'm liking this.
Awesome.
Good stuff.
I'm not sure what it is, but it seems I haven't seen Saved by the Bell, but I haven't really enjoyed any remakes that I can think of except remakes of things about teenagers. Like Cobra Kai is so great. The Babysitter's Club, that was a kind of reboot remake from last year. That was so
it's also good.
I think it's probably just at that age of the people that were watching these as teenagers are now in that thing to like be directors and writers and all that stuff. And so this is I'm going to take this thing I loved, but kind of embarrassed by when I look back, and I'm going to make it anew. I don't know, but
maybe, that makes sense.
And so it's kind of really fun to watch. It's just smart, but it's like on the note with Saved by the Bell. So. And
Shane, what is giving you life? Dun, 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 dun.
So I think what's giving me life at the moment is baking in general. I got into baking last year when there were some very strict lockdowns for a long time in Melbourne where I am, so there's a lot more time around the house. And I'm someone who's always devoted a lot of time to hobbies, but no hobbies that produce a thing at the end, like games, like a great time, but then they're over. I do a lot of wrestling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that's really fun, but at the end, it's over. Having a new hobby where I actually get a thing that you can enjoy and share with people and give to them, like that's been so nice. I'm excited in particular today because I just picked up Yoda Maatalengi's Sweet, which is a cookbook about baking, and once I finish up my Monster Hearts game this afternoon, I'm going to start on his tropical fruit cake with pineapple, fresh mango, coconut, and I'm just extremely excited about this summery cake.
Sounds fabulous.
Sounds super good. What's been giving me life is recently my partner had to pick up an Xbox Series X for work. So on my birthday month too, it feels like a birthday gift to me, even though that's not what it is. So I've been having really a lot of fun playing games. And of course, you get a brand new console and you play a 10-year-old game. So I've been playing Dragon Age Origins. But it's been getting this little boost because of the new machine top of the cutting edge stuff. But I think my favorite thing is it only takes me, I've counted it, it only takes me about 6 seconds to turn on the Xbox, get onto Dragon Age, and it'll just resume, pick up from where I left off. And if the Xbox is already on, it only takes 2 to 4 seconds to reload the game. It's so lightning fast that when I play from scene to scene, you can tell the game thinks the loading screen is supposed to last for a minute or so, but it's gone in 2 seconds. I can't read anything on the screen. No tooltips, no tutorials. So I've had to look it up online. But it's really been giving me life. I've been having so much fun. Dragon Age Origins is one of my favorite games. I thought it'd be a good excuse to go back and play it again because I'm working on the Dragon Age hack. And it's a lot of fun. Alistair and I have just started dating again, as usual, because I mostly play these games to save the world and date someone. That's really what's the other main goal when I play these games. And it's been a lot of fun. Dragon Age Origins really feels like a very good RPG in video game format. I really love it. The story is super, super good. And replaying it again, I realize how much Dragon Age, the series and the games, have really inspired how I run games. So it's been super, super fun going back to it. Listeners, that's our show. The Gauntlet Podcast is a production of The Gauntlet. We have an online gaming calendar, the Gauntlet calendar, where folks can sign up for our sessions. That's how you can sign up for Shane's games and any of our games too. If you've enjoyed this show, please consider supporting us at Patreon. We are at patreon.com/gauntlet. That supports everything we do, including our network of podcasts and our magazine, Codex. Codex is a great magazine. You get to have little bits for your games, or entire games. That's how Brindlewood Bay first came out, through the Codex. So I highly recommend it. And you can find out more about all of this at gauntlet-rpg.com. You can also reach us on Twitter at GauntletRPG or on Facebook at the Gauntlet.rpg group. So please consider rating and reviewing our show. It really helps out a lot. So please, please, please rate and review our show. Thank you. that was our show. Thank you so much again, Shane, for joining us. It was such a fabulous time. I'm so excited for the project that I will be supporting you on, that Sherri will hold you accountable to.
Well, thanks so much to both of you. That was really fun.
And thank you so much, Sherri, for joining us as always. I always have so much fun co-hosting with you. So thank you so much, listeners, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.